Well, here's my earthing bedsheet, on top of which is my earthing bed pad, connected to a clip lead with the help of a Dritz number 3 fastener and a piece of silver wire that it's hanging on to for dear life. I don't know if you can see the silver wire that I have threaded through there. And let's see, that goes to a little circuit, and then the other end goes to an earthing pillowcase. They both cost each the same amount, the bed pad and the pillowcase, around $60 a piece, a regular size. And notice this is a short that, I slept naked, and this is a short. I have my two electrodes, my body bionic electrodes, silver-laced, cotton, whatever it is, fabric, and then I have this in between, and it's like it's a short, and it doesn't matter. What matters is the circuit. Now, the last circuit I used, where did I put it? Good question. Where did I put you, Mr. Circuit? Oh, there it is. My circuit. I got now 2 different sleep circuit trays. I got so many bionic circuits. This one has 6.6 gigaohms of resistance, 66 count 100 mega ohm resistors I got on eBay, and a little AA battery. See, the AA battery is under here. So the voltage is, and it's not a voltage divider circuit. Most of mine are voltage divider circuits. Some are current divider, but not too many. They didn't seem to help much boosting up the amperage. That doesn't help. Well, that particular circuit I just showed you, the voltage was unchanged. It's just slightly depressed, slightly below the voltage of the battery, the AA battery that's in there powering it. So the voltage is somewhere around 1.5 or 1.6 volts, but the amperage is down in the picoamps range. That's some number followed by anywhere from 10 to 12 zeros to the right of the decimal point. That's a lot of zeros. That's not too much amperage, and it's not too much watts. It's somewhere in the range of picowatts. Well, what I did was, I started out using Becker's circuits in his book, The Body Electric, Dr. Robert Otto Becker, MD. Not to be confused with the other Rob C. Beck, or Bob C. Beck, who's, boy, talk about confusion reigning. The other guy wasn't even they called him a doctor. He did military industrial science experiments on, which has nothing to do with what Robert Becker did. Anywho, so I measured the body in the bathtub, and it puts out electricity in the range of somewhere in the vicinity of 100 millivolts, so that would be 1/10 of a volt, DC. I didn't measure I didn't try to measure frequency of, so I'm assuming and I didn't put it on an oscilloscope, so I don't know anything about that. So 100 millivolts, and then I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of a couple microamps. I don't think it was in the tens of microamps. It might have been, but no more. But it fascinated me, because Becker, in his patent, he goes as high as saying you can use up to 1, 2, or even 3 microamps. But in his book, he never uses that. He uses nanoamps. And his original research on a salamander, he broke the arm of the salamander, and as it was healing, regenerating itself, he put it inside this C-shaped device to measure the magnetic field and then infer the amperage that little healing limb was producing, and it was in the picoamp range. In fact, The average was 500 picoamps, and it was as low as, I believe it was 200 picoamps, and as high as 700 picoamps. But he never used that in the application. When he started doing experiments, he always used the nanoamp range. And in his patent, he goes as high as suggesting you can use a couple microamps, 1.5 to 3.5 microamps, I believe was the range. Well, I thought that was a little strange, so I thought I would build that circuit with 6.6 gigaohms of resistance and a 1.5 volt battery, and the resistance was in line, so it was not a voltage divider circuit, nothing fancy, just, like you make a flashlight circuit, just replace the flashlight bulb with the resistors, the string of resistors. It turns out that circuit was wrong, and my hypothesis that it's all about amperage and all you have to worry about is keep the amperage down, I was wrong. You have to keep both the voltage and the amperage down below what the body puts out, but not so low that it doesn't do any good. So this little circuit here, I had spent the dickens of a time developing back in the summer or the late spring of 2014. It was the last conference I got to go to in Hayden, Idaho, the Energy, Science, and Technology Conference that Aaron Murakami and the now retired Peter Lindemann were the organizers, although Aaron Murakami was the guy who seemed to do most of the work. But that's fine. He was young, and nothing like young blood, taking care of business. And he did a fine job, and he still does. And I wasn't able to go. No, 2015 was the last conference I went to. That was it. So I spent the dickens of a time developing this because I was having panic attacks. I was living in the mountains, the Cascades of Washington State, and I had panic attacks driving, and I had to drive the whole distance because I had no money for plane trip. And it was a long trek in an electric car. You got to plan everything where all your stops are, and thank God I wasn't driving onward through Montana because there are no recharging stops in Montana, forget it, or South Dakota or whatever. So, big sections of the country that don't have electric charging stations for electric cars. But I made it all the way to Idaho and back. It was like a wagon trail trip. It took me 3 days of constant driving, night and day, stopping, of course, 5 or 6 hours out of every hour of driving to charge. And very interesting experience, but I needed a stress buster, especially for the trips through the mountains, because I know I would have panic attacks looking over the side of the edge of the mountain road. And because I had to go up to a mountain pass, I was at the base of a mountain pass on the western slope of the Cascades, and I needed to get over to the eastern side to get onward to the eastern side of Washington, where Spokane is where they live, but I had to go on to Idaho where they had the conference. So I needed a circuit because I knew it would calm me down using the principles of Colley and Lyman. Colley is spelled K with a double A, L-I. Lyman is L-Y-M-A-N. And they have their own special folder, B is in blood, and E is in electrification, because that's what the folder represents, is blood electrification, over at educate-yourself.org / B is in blood and E is in electrification. And he has about 3 or 4 different web pages devoted, maybe more, devoted to that topic of Colley and Lyman. The research they did, paid for by a pharmaceutical company to find a means whereby they could bypass cows or cattle or animals for the production and development of vaccinations. In this particular case, an HIV vaccine they wanted to develop. And they wanted to use humans as the means and method whereby to develop and produce the vaccine. And when they needed electricity, the researchers were studying the possibility of using electricity passed through the bloodstream outside the body. They would have the body, or have the person sitting there, and it was like they were going through a dialysis machine. If you know anything about dialysis, the blood has to leave the body, goes through the machine, get washed, and then come back to the machine because the dialysis machine is taking the place of their kidneys. So they were going to do the same thing, pass between two electric plates, electrodes, and pass a current through the blood as it passed between the two plates, and then send the blood back to the body. And they found they didn't have to do that. All they needed were two needle electrodes inserted an inch apart in the person's body, let's say their arm, because in 9 or 10 minutes, even the other Beck, the Bob Beck, knew this. Every 9 or 10 minutes, all the blood passes between any 2 points. So he would have 2 electrodes on the wrist. Well, these were needles that were inserted in the body, and they had to be moved every month because they cauterized where they were. But in 5 months of continuous use, the HIV retrovirus, the blood tested negative in 5 months of continuous use. And the circuit was a simple one. They found that you didn't even have to pulse the DC. It could be continuous DC, very weak. They didn't specify what the parameter was for what they meant by weak, or whatever. They just said it could even be continuous, it didn't even have to be pulsed. So that was the only parameter they gave us in the magazine article, which was cut out. Of all the magazines stockpiled in medical libraries, somebody went through and took out all the magazine articles, cleanly cut it out of the magazine. And if you tried to call them up, they'd deny they ever did it. One gal from Florida was calling up on behalf of a friend who had HIV, and the guy denied it. I don't know which one. He just what? Leave me alone, and hung up on her. Don't call me again. So obviously they were intimidated, and because the research backfired, because what they realized was you don't need a vaccine. you can get rid of an HIV retrovirus with a simple use of continuous DC current, and not weak, and not strong at that, and not even pulsed. Because pulsed gives you voltage spikes. You don't even need that. Just weak continuous DC current. So I found in my I decided to use Becker's circuits for something other than healing. And I discovered they're calming. And I think it's because they reduce the population of pathogens in the body, including parasites, germs, viruses. In fact, this is the exact circuit I used not only to cure me of vertigo by swapping polarity, because I was putting positive on my head and negative on my tailbone as I drove as a stress buster, because it was a very long drive, to be in the car like that for 3 hours. And I used it only when I'm driving, though. I gave myself breaks. I didn't use it when I was charging, sitting in my car waiting for the car to charge. But it was a 3-day trip, one way, each way. And it only cost me $40. I got a lot of the electricity for free. Anyway, so I used it as a stress buster, but I inverted polarity. I put positive at the tailbone and negative. Sometimes I used my ankle rather than my tailbone. But I swapped polarity to combat vertigo. I put positive at my tailbone or ankle and negative at my see, what was I using for my head connection? I think I had a headset with ear pads. It was like mufflers, ear mufflers, and I put carbonized rubber for my electrodes. That's what I think I did, and I made an ear connection. Anyway, whatever I did, I can't remember what I did for my head connection. I might have had a collar around my neck, a earthing collar, a body band collar that I put around my neck. Whatever it was, I swapped polarity, and it gave me a panic attack. And my subconscious mind was going, what? You want a panic attack? Oh, okay. So that means I get to ease off then. Because that's what a panic attack is. The subconscious is simply going on our command. We've programmed it. We believe in the need to panic. And so the subconscious kicks in and beefs it up and makes a mountain out of misery and makes it worse. And then it just gets out of hand. But if you voluntarily give yourself a panic attack, I would do it. I'd stop on the side of the road just before the tree line disappeared, and there would be a visible drop-off. I could see, and then I'd know I'd have a panic attack. So when the bend was coming up, the bend before the area was coming up, I pulled off the side of the road, swapped the polarity, And immediately I had to start having a panic attack, a mild one, because I wasn't, at the drop-off, the visible drop-off area yet on the mountain road. But then I'd drive just a few yards, and the panic attack would vaporize, literally because my subconscious mind had decided, oh, this is what he wants. He wants a panic attack, or because a panic attack is an inverted polarity of the physiology. I learned this from studying somebody else, applying Becker's technology to somebody else, and that was Leon Ernest Eman. Cooperative Healing is his book, and biocircuits is what they're called these days. And they don't use batteries, but I learned that simply by reversing polarity, I was treating myself for PTSD. Leon Ernest Eman in his day, about 100 years ago, they didn't have that term, so he didn't know what to call it. He just said some people, the polarity along their spine vertically from head to toe is inverted. But normally that's not the case. That's only 1% of the population. And the way to cure it is to don't fight it, because if you fight it, it just hits you back stronger. You simply mirror it. You give it what it is. You give back to it what it is, and the body, after several sessions, realizes what it's doing to itself is wrong and flips itself back to normal. So that's what I figured I'd do, and it worked. If I had the hiccups, it would stop a hiccup session by inverting polarity, vertical polarity between the head and the toes, the head and the feet. I would lay down on the couch and have this by my side, and I'd watch some TV, and I'd have the foot pad at my feet and the pillowcase with a pillow in it under my head, and I'd lay there and totally relax, and I wouldn't try to watch TV. I would just totally relax, and I'd invert polarity. If I was busy having the hiccup session, I wouldn't even bother trying to swap the polarity of the wires. I would just put my head down here and my feet up here, and within instantaneously the hiccups would go away. It was unbelievable. So anything that's out of the norm, I'm thinking of nausea and puking. I've used it on that. Well, I've used this particular circuit after I moved from the Cascade area down to Southern California. I got sick, very sick. I think it was E. coli poisoning, orally. I don't know how. Well, I won't describe to you how. I think I know how I got it. Anyway. And when I got home, I didn't have the circuit with me, so I just took a AA battery, and I had some, I don't know what I had, some wire or something, and I connected the battery to my body with as much spread as I could manage, like between my head and my tailbone. And while I was charging my car on the way back, it was an 18-hour drive, I would just tap the connection, because I knew it was too much voltage and amperage. But I would just quickly tap it to my body, and that helped alleviate somewhat the fever and the illness that I had, but it didn't really take care of it. When I came back, this was the circuit I used, the same circuit for vertigo. And it got rid of my illness in no time flat. This is a voltage divider circuit, and this has a 10 mega ohm resistor versus a 1 kilo ohm resistor. And I'm throwing away the voltage of the center tap between the two, representing the 10 mega ohm voltage portion of the voltage division, and I'm only using the 1 kilo ohm voltage. And I measured on my little meter, I'm getting something between 100 and 200 microvolts, so I'm guessing it's 150, and something between 100 and 200 nanoamps, and I'm guessing it's 140 nanoamps. So let's say 150 microvolts and 140 nanoamps. That's not millivolts. That's 1,000 times less than what the body puts out in terms of voltage, and 1,000 times, 10 times less than what the body puts out in the form of, at least 10 times, in the form of amperage, because 1 microamp would be 10 times more than this. So the amperage is relatively high by comparison to the body versus the voltage, which is very low. And I'd spent weeks, days or something, trying to fashion that for my trip to be the least stressful and the most blissful, and that was the correct amounts. So I used a 10 mega ohm resistor and a 1 kilo ohm resistor, a voltage divider circuit, center tapped. So one of these leads is center tapped, and the other one is at the periphery of, and the two surrounding the 1 kilo ohm resistor. And I discard. I just have an empty, the lead of the mega ohm resistor. Oh, well, it goes to the battery. So those two resistors are connected in series, and one end of that series goes to one terminal of the battery and the other goes to the other terminal of the battery. But I don't use that, one of those two connections. I add another connection, I like to say center tap, between them, and that I use, plus the one that's on the other side of the 1 kilo ohm resistor. Those are the two that I use. So I have 3 potential connections, and I only use 2 of them in order to get out the lesser of the 2 voltages. So, and that was what I used, and it worked perfectly. So I used it just now. And you know what, Faith Ahura? This stuff works. The problem was on that other circuit, I didn't reduce the voltage, and that was my mistake. I needed to reduce the voltage. Less than the body's voltage, not more. And I can even short it out. Here I am naked on this earthing bed sheet, and all the current's going to want to go through the circuit. Wait a minute. No. Oh my God. No wonder I got away with it. The electricity is going to take the path of least resistance, right? Unlike prana, which does the opposite to what electricity does. But I believe prana is nothing more than electron holes. That's really my hard-ass theory. Electron holes is radiant energy. Okay, enough of that sidebar. So I've got what have I got? I've got 10 point, no, yeah, I've got roughly, it's 10.1001 mega ohms of resistance. So we'll just say 10 mega ohms of resistance. That's a lot of resistance. The body doesn't even have that much resistance. So the current doesn't want to go through the circuit. And anyway, it can't because it's a dry cell battery. Duh. So it has, excuse me. Oh, I see what I'm thinking. Okay, no, I got 3 pathways. Yeah, it's not going to go through the circuit because a dry cell battery has a wall between the 2 halves of the battery. Unlike a wet cell battery, like a car battery, you can't short out through the battery. You have to short out outside the battery by having no resistance. Basically just a wire connecting both terminals, but it's outside the battery. You do that. Unlike a nickel metal hydride battery, can short itself out internally if the voltage gets low enough. And that's why electric cars my electric car with its nickel metal hydride battery has a, the computer system is set up to shut down the motor should the voltage get too low, because the last thing you want to do is short out the battery. You might have a little explosion on your hands. But a dry cell battery, like we buy in the store, a AA or a AAA or a D cell or a C cell, they got a wall in between, a membrane in between the 2 halves, separating the 2 materials, the two materials of differing electronegativity, and creating the voltage, and preventing a short, an internal short. So the electricity is not going to want to go through there. Yeah, it's going to go through the bedsheet, because that's the path of least resistance. It's just silver wire. My God, it's even less resistance than copper wire. But my skin, the resistance starts, or your skin for that matter, it starts at 1,000 ohms. And that's just one skin surface. The other skin surface, you have to double it. But it starts at 1,000. It can go as high as, I think, 100,000, depending on whether or not you're stressed, how stressed you are. And the internal flesh underneath the skin is a constant of around 500 ohms, half a kilo ohm. So you add that all up, and that can be as high as 2.5 kilo ohms of resistance. Why would the electricity want to go through my body? Yet I got the benefit. Why? Because the voltage is still there. All when you have a short, the only thing you're losing is amperage. You're not losing voltage. So it's still around 100 plus microvolts, as opposed to the 1 volt or 1.5 volts of that other circuit that I gave up using, because I got tired of it. I thought I wasn't getting any benefit out of it. Well, I wasn't, because the amperage was so low, but the voltage was too high. So John Cunningham Lilly of Dolphin fame was correct. Not only can you have thermal damage from too much amperage, but you can have electrolytic damage from too much voltage. And it's more subtle, the electrolytic damage, because you're getting ions shoved over. The positive goes to one side of the body, the negative and to one side of the cells, and the negative go to the other side, and they can't move. So the voltage has to be less than the body's voltage, so that, and the amperage, so that the body doesn't burn and the ions don't get cloistered, the positive ions, at one side of the interior of a cell or on the interior of the body, and the negative at the other side. And the body can perform its functionings, but the pathogens can't, because that's what Colley and Lyman discovered. Pathogens have a hypersensitivity to electricity, vastly more so than we do. And, there are superbugs that are immune to our vaccines, or what do they call those things they give us? God, I can't think of the word. I can't think of the word. If you come down with pneumonia, what do they give you? They give you a shot of penicillin, and that's called a generic category of something. I can't think of the word. Anyway. Well, they can get immune to those things. They can develop an immunity, by natural selection. All the weak ones get killed off, and the strong ones survive to proliferate. They can't get used to this. They are totally incapable. So here we have a surefire way of getting rid of them, but now I know. My original design from 2 years ago, or nearly 2 years ago, is correct. And wouldn't you know it, you know why? You know what I spent my whole time developing this circuit? It wasn't, let me zoom in. It wasn't the 10 mega ohms. I spent very little time on that. Becker used a range of, he didn't use a voltage in his early days, in chapter 7, he didn't use a voltage divider circuit. He just used a single resistor, somewhere in the range between 1 mega ohm and 100 mega ohms, but he said the average 10 mega ohms was his most favorite one, before he moved on to AC methods for regulating the voltage and the amperage, and then, changing the AC back to DC before it entered the body. You can more readily regulate electricity when it's AC than when it's DC, but with a voltage divider circuit, you can somewhat, within certain limits, you can somewhat regulate both the voltage and the amperage. You're kind of limited, though, as I found out. But I started out with a 10 mega ohm resistor to give me what turns out to be the correct amperage for my body that felt right, somewhere in the vicinity of 100 to 200 nanoamps. So I started out with a 10 mega ohm resistor, and then to construct the voltage divider circuit, I played around with various lower value resistors, and I tried everything. And I settled on 1 kilo ohm as the correct value that would then give me the voltage in the range of 100 to 200 microvolts that felt comfortable. So I worked out all the details, and it turned out, I have so many voltage divider circuits I can pick from. I chose to use this one last night. I hadn't been using this for quite some time, and I had this nagging problem. I had sprained my ankle about a month or so ago. I was being really dorky. I just wasn't paying attention, and I was spaced out a little too, and I had shoes on that had the ankles very stiff, running shoes that came up. The collar of the shoe came up just below the ankle, and now I've realized from that sprain that I need to wear moccasin-style shoes that works your muscles and works. You use everything, you know. It's rubber-soled moccasins. I don't know what they're called, but that's what I call them. And they're great for walking, even though it's, you know, hard concrete. They don't have, I could get a gel cushion to put underneath my foot if I really wanted to. I haven't thought of that, because I haven't had much chance to walk around outside in them. I just walk around in the carpet in here most of the time. But yeah, if I had the money, I think I would buy myself some gel cushions, Dr. Sol gel cushions, to put inserts to put inside, to give it a little more cushiony. But it's great because it actually helps alleviate some of the swelling and the pain. But I still had it. It wouldn't go away. My whole foot was swollen, but in particular my ankle, and stiff as well. And I used the circuit, and a lot of the pain and swelling has gone down from last night. It's like magic. And I had this most beautiful dreams. I got to finish off by telling you my dreams. I was having the most terrible time yesterday. I was feeling so vulnerable. I'm going through like psychological Herxheimer reaction because I'm starting to use dilute turpentine in the bath, and I'm feeling very vulnerable emotionally. And this took care of my vulnerability. It took care of that, and the dreams I had were unbelievable. In the middle of the night, I got up, and I was furious with myself. I was angry. I was even shouting and arguing with myself. And then I went back to sleep, and I had the most beautiful dreams. Because I didn't sleep with this. I fell asleep on top of my bed. Excuse me. I fell asleep on top of my bed. You know, my bed was made, and I had this on top, and I fell asleep watching TV with my feet in the circuit. And I woke up and I wanted to get into bed because I was getting cold and I wanted to be under the sheets and under the covers. And so I was too sleepy. I didn't set this up. So I slept initially without the circuit, and I woke up miserable. And that's when I was, you know, cussing to myself. I was really miserable. So since I was so miserable, I thought, well, you know, I'm not going to fall back to sleep in this state of mind. So I set up the circuit despite the fact that I didn't want to take the trouble to, you know, remove the earthing bedsheet to prevent my body, my naked body, shorting out and reducing or hypothetically neutralizing the benefit of the circuit. Well, I didn't neutralize the benefit at all because I fell back to sleep and I woke up so serene and so calm. Oh, so beautiful. And I had the most beautiful series of dreams just before I woke up, so I want to tell you my dreams. I dreamt that I became a flyer. I love these dreams when I fly. I was like Milarepa. I just wouldn't stop flying. And I did it to amuse myself, and I did it to amuse the people around me. And they took it like a matter of course, like it was no big deal. Like, oh, you know, it was mild humor. It was nothing out of the ordinary for them. It was nothing extreme. They weren't, you know, it wasn't jaw-dropping or anything like that for them. It was just mildly amusing for them, and for myself, it was tantalizing to never let my feet touch the earth. And I was doing all kinds of things. I was doing antics. I was flying around sideways around furniture and plants that were up to the ceiling and just missing them by a fraction of a hair, not touching them. I had adroit capability, and I never lost my ability to fly. In some of these dreams, I will lose it because what I do is I run out of gas, and the gas is the inspired emotion in which you never, ever think or feel a negative thought enter your brain, not even spontaneously. You simply sustain that positive thinking and feeling 100% of the time, and never once does, because that's all it takes, is one spontaneous thought to enter your brain of self-doubt or whatever, derision, whatever it is, to enter your brain, and before you know it, you're cascading downwards into more negativity, and then I'd usually come down to earth little by little, and then be on the ground, and I can't move. I can't even walk. But this was different. Not a single moment ever transpired in which a negative thought or feeling entered my brain of the slightest negativity. Nothing but positivity. And I was able to float. This one guy I met, went to his home. He had very high ceilings, out of the ordinary. Kind of like this, only higher.
And his cupboards went all the way to the ceiling in his kitchen, and I proved to be useful, you know. I didn't have to get on a step stool to reach the ceiling of the cupboard. I could get in a kitchen appliance and hand it to him or whatever and tell him what's up there and, you know, on the shelf. And I noticed something else. When his wife came home with the two kids, the three of them were like bickering, you know. And when the little girl sees me, she asks Mommy, "Oh, Mommy, he's flying." "Oh, yeah, dear, that's what he does." And, you know, they were just like matter of course. And they stopped arguing and bickering. And they were nice to each other. And so I realized when I woke up that this is why Milarepa did this. Not just for self-amusement, but he did it just like the followers, the disciples of Pythagoras, could stop this guy from setting his ex-girlfriend's house on fire because he had just broken up. She had kicked him out, and he was going to set her house on fire with her in it. And this disciple of Pythagoras came along and plucked a few notes on his lyre or harp, whatever it was, and because he knew the right tones to mix, the guy turned around 100%, 80-degree turnaround, and he realized his mistake, took all the wood away from the sides of the building that he was going to start the fire with, and left her alone. Completely changed his state of mind. And this is, I think, what Milarepa did. He was not only changing his own state of mind, but he was changing the mind of the people around him because it was uplifting to them. And of course, we know this in TM, but it's a different story to experience it. And I've never really experienced it. I've had glimmers of what it's like to levitate, but nothing like what the TM meditators do, and certainly nothing like what Milarepa has reportedly was capable of doing. Constant hovering, non-stop for months at a time. I think a year at least, or he was at it. He was fasting on green stinging nettle tea, but he was constantly in a state of hovering above ground. And I can see why, because it's uplifting, not only to the practitioner, but to the people around him, anybody close by. So, and that's what it did in my dream. And it was the most amusing home. That it was like a group home because all these people were living there, all these adults and all these kids showed up to play with the family's kids, and the showers were like communal showers. They were huge, and the kids were in there with their bathing suits playing in the water as if it were outside, you know, kids playing under a sprinkler head on a lawn. They were choosing to play inside in the shower. And it had glass plates. It had some kind of a wall and then glass plates partial of the way down and surrounding it. So it's like, you know, it wasn't a family of worried about their privacy, obviously, with all these people in there. And it was the most funniest circumstance, and I'm busy flying around and amusing myself and amusing the people in there. So I just thought I'd tell you my dream because it was a very nice dream. It helped because I was feeling really horribly vulnerable yesterday. It was, oh God, I felt, God, like a meathead. I felt horrible. And I've been working myself to the bone on the computer and whatnot, and so I'm not surprised that I was getting a swollen right foot and swollen ankle and stiff feet in both my feet, but not swollen in my left foot. And this was lingering day after day, and it was telling me, you know, what the problem was. Not only was my immune system depressed, but my adrenals were depressed as well, because you can't get swelling, you know, edema, water retention, unless there's something wrong with your kidneys. And usually, because the kidneys are failing to remove the water from here. And if the kidneys are not functioning, usually the adrenals are not functioning either, because the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys, and the adrenals have to do with rest. They have to do with energy, but where do you get energy? You get energy from a body that gets adequate rest so that the adrenals can get rest, so they can do their job in the daytime when you're active. And if they don't get adequate rest, they malfunction, and the kidneys follow suit. So that's usually the way it works with kidneys and adrenal glands, and that's whenever you get swelling, it's not just an immune problem, it's also a kidney and adrenal problem as well. You're overworked, you're tired, your body is just crapping out on you. So doing the circuit fixed it. it fixed the problem. It killed off some of the pathogens, and it gave the immune cells a boost, because the immune cells use two things that we know of to weaken pathogens before they gobble them up. They eject hydrogen peroxide. They can actually create hydrogen peroxide and eject that at the pathogen to weaken the pathogen, but they can also eject a chemical hand grenade, an electrochemical hand grenade that sets off its electrical detonation in the vicinity of the pathogen once it exits the white blood cell. And I guess it does that so that the white blood cell itself does not get the electric shock. The pathogen gets it instead. So they use electricity, electrochemically induced electricity, and they use hydrogen peroxide to weaken pathogens. So passing electricity through the body helps take the burden away from the immune system to do its job, and helps it do its job for it on its behalf without it having to spend any energy to do it. It's an external application of energy to boost the immune system. And all the cells of the body, it gives them all an electrical boost. But now I know the range, and it's Becker's range, that the amperage has to be weakened with the help of a resistor, at the very least in-line, in-series resistor, in the range of 1 to 100 megaohms. And he said 10 megaohm average was ideal. But if you choose to use a voltage divider circuit, this one that I found was most ideal had a 1 kiloohm resistor in addition to the 10 megaohm resistor that I used to bring down the voltage as well as the amperage in the range of 100 or so microvolts, and the 10 megaohm single resistor by itself brought down the amperage to the range of 100 nanoamps. So, gosh, I had it all wrong. Faith O'Hara, I stand corrected. There's nothing wrong with this. What was wrong was the other circuit. The voltage was too high. And we can even short out the body by laying this down on an earthing bedsheet. And not only is this an earthing bedsheet, but underneath is an earthing mattress. This is a very special bed I bought from a very special person. To take it off his hands and give him some money, he sold it at a loss, because this bed cost $2,500 when he bought it. They don't make them anymore because it's very hard to motivate people to buy the whole bed. But I bought it off his hands because he needed the money, and I had the money to give him, and I didn't need the bed, so I didn't pick it up for like at least a year. It was in his garage for over a year. So I finally picked it up because I needed it, and it's beautiful. It's got a topper foam on top of the base foam, and it's very soft. It's like sleeping on a cloud. But the mattress itself has silver wires laced in it, not just the sheet that comes with it, the fitted bottom bed sheet. So it doesn't matter if you short out your body with an earthing bed sheet. It still works. But when I'm going to make the bed, and what I'm going to do is I came to the conclusion, or I came to the decision, let's put it that way. It's not a conclusion, it's a decision, to not use the quilt comforter, because it's too much anyway. It's for me, I get too hot at night. So I don't even need it. I usually just push it off to the foot of the bed. But it builds up so much static charge. It's unbelievable what a quilt can do. I don't know what it's made out of some synthetic material. And the whole quilt builds up and retains an electrostatic charge. And I think, well, that may not be a very good idea. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be using this. I don't know. So I'm going to try never having it on my bed. And so I'm going to make my bed. I'm going to rearrange and put the circuit on top of the bedding. And so I won't have this earthing bed sheet to short it out. So when I take naps and lay down to rest in the middle of the day, I won't have any short. And I won't be naked because it's too cold in the room to do that. I only sleep naked. But I'll have my bare feet because I prefer to keep my feet bare. They get itchy if I wear socks. I don't want to have to wear socks. I don't want to have to get that cold. So I try to be bundled up enough so that so I can keep my feet bare and let them breathe, because they get itchy, scratchy if I cover them with socks after about an hour or a couple hours. So I'll make my connection with my feet to the foot for the mini bed pad, and my head to, I think I'll put a pillow in this during the daytime so that I can make connection with my cheek, the cheek of my head up against the pillowcase. And continue to make use of it because I really got benefit. I could feel yesterday the relief in my feet was unbelievable because like I say, I told you I have stiffness in both my feet because I haven't been walking. It's like it's a detraction. Why walk if you got an injured ankle? But I never get over it. It never goes away. Antibiotic, that's what it's called. Penicillin is an antibiotic. So I took wheatgrass many years ago when I had swelling in my right leg. I didn't know about this electricity or silver. All I knew was wheatgrass and fasting. So I took wheatgrass, and it took several shots of wheatgrass to turn the swelling around, but it worked. But now I don't grow wheatgrass, so I look for other alternatives, but I overlooked electricity because I didn't know to keep the voltage down. So you listen to me, yada yada yada. This is a very long video. I certainly am excited over what I've rediscovered, and if it wasn't for Faith O'Hara, I don't think I would have bothered. I would have been very depressed. I thought, oh gee, it doesn't work. I found fault with it. My body didn't like it. Well, it's because the voltage was too high. That was the only problem. So by bringing down the voltage, now I can bring up the amperage. Because if you don't, it doesn't do much good, I found, unless the amperage is high enough to kill off the pathogens. It's not the voltage that kills the pathogens. It's a question of what does the body tolerate when it comes to voltage. But it's the amperage that kills the pathogens and weakens them, or actually what it does is it weakens them sufficient so that the immune system in the body can kill them off, see. Because the body can never get, it's in a stranglehold. It can never get ahead of the problem. So the electricity weakens them so the body can kill them off. And in particular, that's a problem for retroviruses because they can be very virulent. But they stop replicating by the slightest electricity passed through the body. They cannot, the protein coating that surrounds a virus is used to pierce through the membrane of a cell to inject the cell with the viral content, with the DNA or whatever it's called, the RNA. I think it's the RNA that the virus contains. It can't function. The protein coating to inject itself into its host cell cannot function. So they can't replicate. So they just swim around, they float around in the blood, and eventually they get killed off. And that's why it took 5 months. Because the use of electricity arrested the ability of the HIV retrovirus to replicate. And then it was just a question of killing off all the remaining population in the blood, and that took 5 months to completely rid the blood of the HIV retrovirus. So if it doesn't kill off the pathogen in question, at least it weakens it, and the immune system can attack it. The weakened immune system of the body can get rid of it. And I would imagine that somebody who went through chemo could benefit from this, especially so. I don't know. There are no reports of anybody trying this, who's been through chemo. But they could probably use it and prevent themselves from getting dead or ill from, picking up an infection with their reduced immune system. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Eventually, when you've got something like microvolts, your battery will run down. And that was the other thing that impressed me. Well, I'm going to make 6.6 gigohms resistance and my battery will never run down. Yeah, but it's the voltage is too high. No, excuse me. No, I'm wrong. No, it's the amperage that runs down the battery. Right. It's the amperage that runs down the battery. And it's the amperage that kills off the pathogens. So when you reduce the voltage to a tolerable level, and that was my problem with that circuit, it was too high. So this is 10,000 times less than that circuit of 6.6 gigaohms. So 10 megaohms is somewhere in the vicinity of 1,000 times less. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. 1,000 times less, because a gigaohm is 1,000 times more than a megaohm. So this is slightly less than 1,000 times reduced inline series resistance affecting the voltage. And it's perfect. So the voltage is... Oh no, excuse me, no, the voltage divider, I'm sorry. The voltage gets dropped because of the ratio between the 10 mega ohms of resistance and the 1 kilo ohm of resistance, which is 10,000 to 1. So it's a 10,000 to 1 drop in voltage. Well, in theory, but in practice it doesn't turn out that way. But the amperage is a 10 million drop in amperage. 10 million to 1 drop. So the amperage is dropped 10 million to 1, and the voltage is dropped 10,000 to 1. And that's a perfect situation on a 1.5 volt battery. That's what you want in that ballpark. Anyway, that's what I used for a 1.5 volt battery. Actually, if you had a different battery of different characteristics, you might want to use a different situation. But it would be along those lines. It would be parallel. It would be similar to that because it's, yeah, something like that. Because it's the end result that you're looking for, basically. That's what matters. Okay, enough yada yada. I should take a break from talking and take my silver bath this morning. So my ankle's going to recover. Probably it'll take a couple of days because this swelling was a little severe, but it's already reduced, so I definitely am showing progress of getting over that. So these pathological conditions, anything involving an infection and swelling, a little simple circuit, one little battery and two little resistors, or even one resistor. If I just used a 10 mega ohm resistor, you know, that would have been enough, but a 10 mega ohm and a 1 kilo ohm resistor, a couple clip leads, some tin foil to help the connection because, you know, it can be problematic sometimes hooking onto the wire with a clip lead because I didn't solder in that. So I use aluminum foil to create a little bulge around the wires coming off the resistors, and I just twist the resistor wires together. And then the bare one that I want to connect to, I use a wad. I wad up a strip of aluminum foil. I roll it up. I fold it up several times to get a narrow strip, and then I cut off a short section, and with the help of my fingernail I start the first fold, and I wrap that. I fold it and I flatten and I fold and I flatten around the wire so I get this crunched fold, multi-fold surrounding a spiral wrap around the wire to create a slight bulge that the clip lead can grab a hold of. So, you know, that's basically my sense of circuit is aluminum foil, masking tape, cardboard, and clip leads. That's how I... Oh, and I do use tools. I use needle nose pliers and wire cutting pliers and wire stripping pliers, because sometimes you have to strip wires. Like on the battery, I use... Oh, and a battery case. I use a battery case, a single AA size battery case, and so it has very slender wires that come off, and I had to strip those to make contact. And then I use small, miniature, mini-size alligator clips with no wire. You just buy them at the hardware store. They come like 4 to a pack to hold my connections together. And then my final connections are the clip leads that come off the circuit. So it's a really simple circuit. And then a piece of cardboard to attach it to. You know, I make do, basically, because my soldering skills are nearly zero. I'll smoke up the house and fry the circuit board rather than accomplish anything. And half the circuit will be attached and the other half won't. And meanwhile, I'm trying to clear out all the smoke from the building. You know, it's like, come on, you know. So I never took the trouble to try to develop my soldering skills because I never felt I had the need to. You know, if I had the need to, I would. But the need has never arisen, so I've got the soldering kit, and I've got this silver lead-free solder, and, you know, and I've got multi-little boards to practice on my soldering skills, but I never take the trouble to. I do something else instead. I got so many things to keep myself amusedly, interestedly active in pursuit of knowledge and experience of knowledge that I have no desire to build up my soldering skills. Not yet. Maybe one of these days I will. So that's my little video. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Faith Ahura. You have been a godsend of inspiration. So not only have I revisited the silver bath, but I've revisited the sleep circuit, and now I have multi-sleep circuits. See, this one is my amperage, my closed circuit sleep circuit, but I have an open circuit sleep circuit, which is what Faith Ahura got me inspired to redevelop. And I started out with a free energy device, and I got away from that for sleeping on because it's all wrong. It's terrible for the body. But I hauled out my other sleep circuit, and I made modifications to it. I put in 2 diodes. I should do a diagram of this. And it's an open circuit, even though it's a closed circuit inside, but it's connected with an open circuit on either side. One goes to the bed sheet and the other goes to the grounding wire outside. It's a very simple circuit. So I'm going to make the diagram and attach it to this video. It's a very simple circuit, and I have 2 connections coming off of here. See, I made it like a plug, like a wall outlet, so that one side connects to the grounding rod. That's my grounding rod port with a little snap connector. And that, by the way, is a 100 kilo ohm resistor. That's an earthing cord. So I have all kinds of resistors protecting me from surges that might happen outside in the ground. And then on my output side, I have a little electric outlet connected. So I can have 2 ports that I can connect into, but I have this Y connector. So I come off it on both sides, so I don't have to use both grounding ports on this outlet. And one goes to the earthing bed sheet that I slept on, and the other goes to this mini bed pad. So I can make my bed and not be on the bed sheet and take the mini bed pad and put it on top of the bedding and still have the benefit of grounding. But I disconnected the pad, so as to connect it to the circuit. So actually, I'm only using one side of that Y connection. So now I got all kinds of circuits. I've got the grounding circuit for this. I've got the Colley and Lyman and Dr. Becker circuit for helping my ankle heal and for giving me good dreams. And then I have a free energy device, a Barbosa and Leal circuit I'm experimenting with. All kinds of circuits. And then I got my circuits for making colloidal silver to put in the bath that I'll take this morning, and the magnetic stir bar apparatus for mixing hydrogen peroxide with it to make silver hydroperoxide. So I got all kinds of circuits constantly running. I'm a circuit guy. I'm a gadget guy. Why not? I even got my Wi-Fi up there. It's like, me worry about Wi-Fi? Not likely. I'm not about to worry about something like that. Some things I do, like smart meter. I will not live in a building with a smart meter. I'd rather be homeless in my car than live in a building with a smart meter attached to that building. But Wi-Fi, fine. Give me all the Wi-Fi you want. I'll put up with it. I have to put up with the AC field that surrounds me inside a building. And that's worse than the Wi-Fi. But a smart meter is worse than an AC field. That's the way I rate it. Smart meter is worse than the AC field we live in, and an AC field that we live in is worse than Wi-Fi. So don't worry about Wi-Fi. If you're living in an AC field, and just about everybody is, don't worry about Wi-Fi. It's a waste of time to worry about. The thing to worry about is a smart meter. You do not want that thing around you, anywhere close by whatsoever or attached to your building. That thing will drive you nuts. If it doesn't drive you nuts already, if nothing else if nothing else in our urban lifestyle doesn't drive us nuts already. So I think that's enough said on this topic. I sidebarred at least I kept myself to sidebars that are somewhat relevant to the topic. I'm tempted to go to another sidebar, but I'm not going to do it. Oh, it hurts my heart. Okay. If it pinches my heart, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to hold back. I feel so happy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. One more sidebar and then I'll shut up. I've been thinking what to do about my Barbosa and Leal circuit.
Now that I spent a lot of time yesterday. I woke up like 2, 3 in the morning. I spent several hours doing the diagram and the blog. On my Barbosa Leal earthcaptor.blogspot.com web blog, on my latest blog was, what am I going to do about replacing the grounding rods? And I created what looks to me, a Schottky PIN diode, which is unlike a normal PN diode. Unlike a normal PN diode, it has the added feature of a middle layer between the P layer and the N layer that the I represents. I forget what it was. And it's not merely a Schottky diode. It's not merely a PN diode. So it's a funny arrangement I'd come up with. But what do you do? How do you make something when you have limited materials? So I thought, well, I don't have a metal plate, aluminum metal plate. All I have is aluminum foil, and that's not going to work. And the steel plates I have are too small. But I have 3 types of wire. I've got enameled magnetic wire, copper wire, and then I've got copper-clad aluminum wire, my purple wire, and then I've got floral wire from the hardware store, enameled floral wire. This is iron. So I got iron wire, I've got copper-clad aluminum wire, and I've got copper wire. I got the 3 different substances that Tesla's trimetal generator utilizes. So I could make 3 different bifilar pancake coils, and I could try out different arrangements, different stacking, different connections, to see if anything works, and bypass the use of metal plates, because metal plate has an eddy current in it, and Tesla, in one of his patents, he actually used wire instead of iron to shield 2 different coil windings on his transformer. He wrapped his primary on top of his core, and then he wrapped the floating iron wrap that wasn't connected to anything, and it was to serve as a barrier. And then he wrapped a secondary on top. So he had 3 layers of windings, and the middle layer was his barrier, his iron barrier. And because it was wire, it reduced eddy currents on the inside instead of just using sheet metal. So here's a guy making use of materials that were available to him to serve his purpose well. And that's what I got to do, and it'll probably work out better this way. What else? I think that's everything. Okay, whatever. I just wanted to finish that thought because my camera shut off in the middle of a thought, and I wasn't paying attention. I kept yada-yadaing. So there's other stuff I said. I can't remember what I said. Oh, yeah. This is how I wind a toroid. I took all the wire off the spool, and I put it on this yard-long rod with 2 washers on either end. And I got a very narrow, long spool that I can fit inside the hole of the toroid as I wrap it. I can pass that through, and that helps me wind the toroid. Otherwise, it's a lot of work if you don't have a tool to help you. I'm going to have to look up winding methods online for winding toroids eventually. At the moment, I think I did a long time ago. Yeah. Anyway, so that's everything I have to say. Thank you very much, Faith the Horror. You've been an inspiration, and I've managed to improve my health by restarting a couple different topics that I hadn't been dwelling on. So now I'm going to go take my silver bath with very dilute turpentine, so I don't have to scream. The other thing I forgot to say, I can actually put all my weight on my right foot, and my sprained ankle doesn't hurt. There's no pain there. I'm walking on it like it's nothing. There's a little stiffness, so there might be still some swelling. Yeah, I can feel it in my toes. There's still some swelling. But there's absolutely no pain. I can put all my weight on my right foot. Yay! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my God. Goody, goody.